Alright, so here's our mage tier list. Uh, our A tier or S tier is a little bigger than it was when we ended the list, ended the discussion for the original stream. I put Vincent in here in the interim. Um, and I do believe he deserves it. He has such a great machine gun USB plus BSB combo. The BSB is there because it provides him an inexhaustible source of fire damage. And the only reason this works is here's a good comparison. Is I was looking at Ace today because we didn't look at Ace when I did um, the old mage discussion. So I had to add him on retroactively. And Ace has a problem. He has, though he has one of his chase USBs that we went over on the physical list, um, and a very good BSB. He has a very good BSB. Ace has no soul break generation to speak of. Um, and that's where Vincent claims his S, is that with that support 4 allows him to activate this combination and actually make use of it, while Ace, with his good BSB and his chase USB, has a lot of trouble. It's either use one or use the other, and there's a big difference between that and the combination of using them both. And Terra's another good example here, because while with Ace, you're probably going to want to be using his awesome BSB, with Terra, you're absolutely not going to be using her less than stellar BSB. Instead, you're going to elect to use her USB. And it stinks that Terra has the potential to be one of the best mages in the game because she has support 4 and actually has the soul break generation that not many others have. With the really a pretty good machine gun USB and OSB and strong legend materia. Terra is right on the edge. She's ready to go if DNA wants to let her be what she can be. Vincent is a preview. Vincent is the hybrid version where Terra would probably be stronger overall magic. Vincent just has that added versatility and that really just pushes him over the edge on two different lists. Any reason I moved Shantoto back to A? I like the lightning chain. I think she has multiple paths to being good. Where with Ace, you're probably just going to use his BSB. His USB is not that good. Shantoto, though she doesn't have support 4 access, does have a at least decent burst soul break, has the lightning chain, which she can use by itself, if if you desire, and it will work on a lightning team just fine. Or the USB, which I'm still not feeling too good about. Not because it's not good. With their fast casting and stuff like that, and with the way the Witch USB works, I mean, if you're getting if you're getting a free cast off with every Witch ability, then the huge cast time isn't that much of a concern anymore. The problem is she's the only person in the game that can make use of Witch abilities. So I don't. I just have misgivings, I guess, about honing a skill for one person because no one else is going to use it. I don't think Shantoto puts out a particularly high amount of damage in a lot of scenarios, but but she's got the options that get her there, and I think she's good enough for A. I'd find it hard to put her into that group of B. Um, Alright, so for the other support mages in S tier, we have Fusion and Sid Reigns. They're pretty self-explanatory. Sid Reigns is just a buff monster. Um, he gets an OSB. He hits 2 elements, which I believe is to his credit rather than detriment. I know the omni-resist things are a thing, but it it becomes less and less of a deal, I guess. Because how often will you be using these characters for their non-elemental component? I guess, I mean, one of the reasons that the rest here is the best people for that would be Rafa and Fusion, because the N element status is not a part of their strength, which is their burst soul break. And because the N element is a part of it, it's not like she does a exceptionally greater amount of wind damage than she does non-elemental. She will do more wind damage mostly because you have the ability to put wind damage equipment on her, but that's a thing you can get around by just throwing synergy stuff on her instead. And same thing for Rafa. However, Alphino, Papalymo, and Vincent all rely on their N-element status and are pretty much locked into their element. Using them for non-elemental is just, I don't know, it's a waste. Alphino is going to do a lot of damage anyway because so much of his damage potential is put into an instacast command. So Fusion's there, support 4. Yeah, Fusion's just awesome. That support 4 plus the fact that her burst is instacast, ninja cast command. She just has soul break generation for days, and that's why usually when you see me use her in both single player and multiplayer, I'm often making use of her attach wind super soul break as well as her burst together. It's a really nice thing to have. And that's why I'm less thrilled, I guess, with Fusion's LMR, her Legend Materia relic, because it gives her attached wind status at the start of the fight. When you've got support 4, not only do you have support 4, but you have a very nice super soul break that gives you and wind, and it just you're gonna get very little usage out of it. So, say if I was pulling on the Fusion LMR banner, I would probably just stop pulling after I got her OSB and not care about her LMR. Sid Reigns is, just Sid Reigns is Sid Reigns. He does so much damage. And has so much benefit from his stat buffs that hitting an Omni resist boss with Darker Holy is still gonna do enough damage to make him worth being on the team, and that's just a silly thing as it is. So I don't have to go into why he's there too much. Papalymo is one of the 3 scaling mages, and the reason why he's here and the other 2 are not is solely because of his Legend Materia and OSB. He's just a good mage, just like the others. He has White Mage 4 access, which is interesting for what, someone who's statted as a pure black mage. So he's got a little utility working for him, which is nice. But Maria and Adia, the other 2 scaling mages, neither have Legend Materia, and Maria's the only one of them with an OSB. And it really is the Legend Materia for Papalymo that allows him to double cast fire. That's just kind of gross when you consider how much damage he can put out in a turn. I believe it's a 35%er. Even at 25%, it's still really, really good. Yeah, it's 35. It's 35. I mean, come on. Hey, Horse Protect. Also, yeah, Papalymo has a really, really nice complementary Super Soul Break. in ley lines, which to this day, as far as Super Soul Breaks are concerned, is still considered the best offensive mage buff Heiska. Alphino squeaked onto this list just because of his versatility as a mage. Really, really, really powerful wind damage. More so than even Sid Reigns. Sid Reigns gets on his command 1, every time he hits with it, he bestows upon himself instant magical attacks 1, or Alphino actually gets a different status that is just instant action 1. So any action he takes, no matter if it does damage or not, it becomes instantaneous. And that's a really nice thing. It's just a little bonus, I guess. It allows him to use RWs at instacast speed. It allows him to use his deployment tactics at instacast speed. It will one day allow him to use his weird but cool Dreadworm USB at instacast speed. But most of the time, you're basically just going to be spamming Command 1. Even in a world where Tiamat and Meltdown exist, his Command 1 still out DPSs them, just because of the instacast component. Yes, you can cast Meltdown at instacast, but then that stops the chain from working, and losing out on that next instacast is poor for his DPS. So you're rarely going to be using Meltdown with Alphino. If you need to, Alphino attacks so fast that he has the Soul Break generation to support infinite bursting. However, there will be times when Alphino needs to just throw in a spell to help him out in case he's not in burst mode anymore, and that would be a time when you would use Meltdown or Tiamat or something. But Tiamat is purely an AoE option for him, and eventually, if you decide to go and grab his USB, which is very interesting and allows him to really go AoE crazy, because it's completely summoning based, and the more summons that you use builds it up, and at the end of the USB, it rolls a percentage of the damage that you did during the USB together and casts it at the end. It's a really interesting USB. I'm not sure like how effective it is, but it's still cool. So Alphino's here just because of the versatility of extremely high damage with his first command, and the Ether command allows him to use anything you've got in the game that you can throw on him, and because of his crazy ability pool of White Magic 6, Black Magic 6, and Summoning 6, there are many things that you can throw on him and just use it. So he fits in a lot of places that other people can't. Rafa. Rafa's just I'm gonna say it, she's a lesser version of Sid Reigns. She does have an excellent USB that comes out. She's just missing support 4, which I believe is one of the pivotal parts of what makes Sid Reigns as good as he is. So you're either Makomite Dr. Mark's teaching out her BSB because it has a buff component on it and you want that out as fast as possible, or you're doing the same for her USB instead. She belongs here because of the combination of her S-tier BSB and excellent USB and strong double cast lightning legend materia. However, I mean, she is not as good as Sid Reigns overall, and that's important. Though among the S-tier mages, I do believe she, she is the only one that claims lightning. However, since she is not an N lightning or an Imperil lightning character, she doesn't do the most lightning damage, and that's important to consider while we look at the A tier. Yeah, she can dance if needed. That's good. Right. The chat brings up a good point about Alphino. He has a very high mind. He doesn't have the White Magic 6 just for show. He has a very high mind, and he can perform as an off healer. during the beginning of fights instead of it as kind of a not as good, obviously, but at least a substitute for him not having support. So you don't need to put Dr. Monk's teachings or Mako Might on him because he has the ability pool to support starting off the fight out of burst mode and just slinging spells like Proteka and Curata or Ultra Cure, stuff like that. So A tier, I'm not going to go into it as B. I think the S tier is really the most important. That's other people can do their own legwork about how they feel about A. But going down the list, we have Maria, the scaling BSB. Excellent, just great earth damage, the most magical earth damage we're going to see. Dash is the highest damage lightning burst, and his benefit and why he's probably at the very top of A is that at support 4 plus strong Legend Materia makes him a candidate for us, but I just think he's a little outside until he gets something more than just his BSB. But he is the highest damage lightning mage in the game, also with support 4. Very, very important. X-Death. X-Death is on this because of the insane utility of his Grand Cross. Not only does he have the Grand Cross Super Soul Break, I believe it's a Super Soul Break. It may be just plain Soul Break, but it doesn't matter because you don't care about the damage it puts out anyway. But he does get a matured version of it as a USB later, which also provides a Magic and Mind buff to party, which is nice because he's a pure Sage with White Magic 6 and Black Magic 6. So he's very versatile and has an Imperil Dark at BSB. And I was talking about this yesterday in Discord. Imperil may have exceeded an element as a useful addition to a Burst Soul Break. I do believe that that's true. And maybe less so in the cases of mages, because they have a little more trouble generating Soul Break. See, in X-Death's scenario, you're most likely going to be... He's going to be a Dr. Monk's Teachings Mako Might person, because you want his buff, his Grand Cross, and his Mind Magic buff at the start of the fight, or you want his Imperil because you want that to help out the team too. And if you're using Dr. Monk's Teachings or Mako Might, you're definitely going to have a hard time generating Soul Break gauge with a mage. Next up, we have Terra. I went into Terra a little bit already, and how she's ready to go. She's primed and ready to go. Just needs a good BSB. Otherwise, why I moved her up to A from B is because I don't think people should shy away from honing 5-star abilities anymore. And even if she doesn't have the BSB, at the very least, she can support 4, she can USB, and then she can chain Faraga and go and do a real respectable amount of damage just doing that. And that is definitely enough to get her A. I derated her too much just because of her bad BSB. And she's got an OSB as well, which definitely counts for more on mages than it does for physical. Physical, here, let me show you the exact numbers. So you really, the point gets home. We have Terra with her USB, which just, even though it's called USB, they do Super Soul Break level damage, and it's very typical. That's why Terra's perfect for this. 17.0 is the single target Super Soul Break generic number, where their OSB does a 40.0. That's a hell of a difference. But when we look at somebody like Cloud, a physical is closer to a 7.5, with their Super Soul Break level stuff. 8, 7.5, that area, they only move up to 12.0 with their OSB. So it's not that much of an increase in damage. So the USBs matter a lot more on physical characters, where there's a reduced effectiveness for OSBs, and that changes for mages because they can output an extreme amount of single target damage that's easier to hit. So next we have Quistis. An important thing I want to bring about Quistis. We've learned how Magicite dungeons are going to be released in the future, and there's an important little fact, is that there is no Magicite dungeon focused towards you having poison damage. There is no poison Magicite dungeon. That reduces Quistis' effectiveness, because I think a lot of the reason why I put the element next to people here is so you understand, you can look at your own list and say, here are my strengths and here are my weaknesses, and here is, maybe I'm weak in fire right now, so maybe I'll take a look at, places that Papalimo or Terra or Vincent appear, and then I can improve my fire damage. You don't have to do that with Quistis. Why Quistis stays in A rank anyway is because she's a support 4 mage. She's a support 4 mage. She does have a good BSB, and she does have an OSB which has a weapon that has plus poison damage on it. So even though you may not, poison may not be as needed in an element as in the future, it's still good to have, because there still will be non-Magicite bosses that are poison vulnerable. And she has support 4, so she can, I don't know, she can swing with the big guys anyway because of that. Adia's next. Just basically a version of Maria, but doesn't have OSB. That's all. All you really need with these people is that scaling BSB. It's really, really nuts. It just does so much damage. Adia herself can use Memento Mori in addition to her Stitch in Time command, which really just power pumps her magic. And even though it takes over 1200 magic to hit her 6-hit, it's not even that difficult. And they just do it an obscene amount of damage, and she can hit ice and dark. Though she gets attach ice and ice on her burst soul break, the dark is still a component there. And even though you're losing out on the N ice, you're still at least hitting vulnerability at 6 hits, and it's still a viable thing. Unlike some other people that just don't have the benefit of that 6 hits, which makes even their off element still good. Vivi, we have fire, lightning, ice. His primary element is fire, but he can do lightning and ice damage, because what I believe, I'm pretty sure I know what I'm talking about here. I know a little less about Final Fantasy IX coming up, so I want to double check. Yeah, his second BSB is the Fire, Lightning, Ice BSB, and it's not an element, and that's why I noted the other 2 elements, even though he's more fire-focused usually. It is a magic and resistance plus 30% to all allies buff, just like Rafa does. So, because he's not focusing on one element, having all 3 elements is important. Though he's not going to do an extreme amount of damage with them, that magic and resistance buff is what is really the defining factor in the burst. So you can consider him viably tri-elemental. And what's important about the banner that BSB2 appears on is that also has, I noted yesterday, Steiner's OSB on it, which is also a strangely viable tri-elemental OSB, because the multiplier is increased over typical just by exploiting element, which is really nice. Where you have Bartz who hits 4 elements with his OSB, but it doesn't get an increased multiplier, so it's always 10. Steiner's is like a 13 hitting 3. I'll take the 13 hitting 3 rather than the 10 hitting 4 any day. Though Bartz is a completely different bag of shells when it comes to character strength, but Moving on, we have Kuja, who's just awesome. Probably has the tied for the best Imperial Dark BSB in the game, just because it does an extreme amount of damage. Because it's enabled by him having Boot Doom on him, which is really easy, and his OSB shares the same trait. So all you got to do is Doom Kuja, and he just starts out putting extreme amounts of damage, and imperil damage while we are at it, and it's imperil. Yeah, I really like imperil BSBs now. Strong Legend Materia. Kuja with Desh are on the A plus tier. They're on the edge of S. Shantoto went into a little bit. She just does a little bit of all of it. She can hit elements other than lightning, but remember what I said about Vivi. It's because Vivi doesn't dedicate himself to one element while Shantoto does. That the other two elements that Shantoto can do are more like bonuses, just so you can bring her to other places, even though it's not that great. She definitely falls behind, probably falls behind a C tier if trying to use those other two elements. So I don't really, that's why I consider her a lightning mage over anything else. Ash just does a lot of lightning damage. Unfortunately, not the greatest skill set. I mean, White Magic 3 is useful sometimes. But really, you Dr. Mark's teachings, or Mako Might with Ash, and then you just start Burst Soul Breaking until OSB at the end of the fight. Very, very plain character. She is a summoner, which is nice, but she just does damage and has a double cast lightning Legend Materia, which helps her out there. Just very plain, but very powerful. Very powerful lightning mage. Nabat is tied, in my eyes, with Kuja for the Imperial Dark. One, because she can support 4, and this is what makes her such a powerful mage. Support 4 is, it's the holy grail for mages. The Imperial Dark is a nice burst soul break that can do good damage with its first command, single target, but when you're in a area of effect situation, then you can use their single target to high effect, which has a chance to apply minor imperil as well, and that increases her ability to inflict imperil, which is really nice. And Nabat is aided very much, unlike many people here, by having a very strong super soul break that has an attack and magic debuff on it, which is really nice and normally not worth mentioning, except she has support 4, so she can absolutely support having 2 effective soul breaks. Malik is on here because he has a debuff attached to his burst soul break, like Fusion, just not instant cast, and lightning instead. He also uses ninja cast commands, has strong legend materia, and has a buff and debuff. I believe magic blink to party and like a full breakdown USB that also does damage. It's a very good USB. And he's really a lot better than I've seen people think of him. I don't know. I don't get the hate. It's possibly because in the first event that he appeared in, it was a race between banners that Rafa's banner won clearly, and Malik just got left out. So maybe he just doesn't get used as much. But I do believe he's a good character, and he also has access to darkness, so he's able to Memento Mori himself. Ace, I already went into a little bit already. He has a chase fire USB, but really his strength is in his BSB. I'm going to go into it a little bit because I didn't do that in the discussion. Because I forgot Ace existed for some weird reason, even though I like Type 0 so much. And Ace is one of my favorite characters in Type 0. So, Fire Aga Rifle. That is what the RF stands for. Single enemy, instant cast. Oops. Grants physical blink 1 to all allies, hasten burst mode to the user. So, The instant cast is an extra benefit if you consider physical blink 1 part, the buff that his burst brings. I personally don't. I believe the instant cast plus physical blink 1 is about equivalent to a real opener for a burst soul break. Sorry, Ace. But don't worry about it because you have some really awesome commands. His second command is 2 group attacks that grants Lingering Spirit. This is the same buff that Sid Reigns gets on his second command. Rather than the Stitch in Time, which reduces defense and increases magic, Lingering Spirit reduces resistance and increases magic. Prefer Stitch in Time because you're less concerned with your defense in the back row. But Lingering Spirit is not bad for Ace because in his first command, he has a Ninja Cast Time, 5 attacks if users in the front row. So whether it was defense or resistance are both an equally not as good thing. But having 5 attacks, and all you have to have him is in the front row, and Ninja Cast means that his first command is going to be spitting out some really extreme damage, even though he doesn't have End Fire. He does have End Fire on his USB, I believe. He does, but like we saw with Ace, he has no way to use both of these together effectively. It's pretty much strictly a Torment full throttle thing. So that's SNA, and that's all I'm going to go into. Have fun with B, C, and D. D, the good old D. Strong banners. Lightning Bot coming up really soon. And then the next 3 are fairly distant. So this is one to keep in mind for the immediate future. Is the Lightning Nabat banner one that has Sid Reigns and Nabat featured on it. Very strong Mage banner. Very strong banner overall. With Sid Reigns being S tier, Lightning, as we'll find out in the physical list, being S tier, and Nabat being A tier, and they pretty much dominate the entire banner. Extremely strong. Extremely strong. ETA is July 6th, so a little less than 2 months. The Extreme Banners, ETA says it right next to it, late June.